All right, our next team is the Indianapolis Colts. And if we're going to talk about the Indianapolis Colts, we have to talk about their starting quarterback situation, and it's starting to look as if that starting quarterback is going to be Daniel Jones. Let me repeat that in case you didn't hear me. Daniel Jones. Now, I'm a Giants fan. I've witnessed the Daniel Jones experience far too much than I would have liked. Um, Nothing against the guy personally. I'm sure he's a bright kid, certainly a great athlete, right? He's like 6'4", 6'5". We can see the way that he runs in the NFL. But if Daniel Jones is going to be the starter for the Indianapolis Colts, and the reason why it seems that way, well, we'll get to that in a second. Okay. But if that's the case, where Daniel Jones is the starter, which is where all signs are pointing, that's not a good thing for the Colts, in my opinion. Now, why do we think Daniel Jones is going to start? Well, number one, Anthony Richardson is just very injury prone, right? So even if he starts the season, there's a better chance than most quarterbacks that he's going to be injured. And we've seen that now. I believe 2 seasons. Has it only been one? I think it's 2 seasons Anthony Richardson has been in the NFL at this point. We've seen how frequently injured he is. More importantly, reports have come out, and you don't know sometimes if there's rumors, reports, whatever. But it's been said enough, reported on enough, and apparently is coming from coaches inside the Colts locker room that they're out on Anthony Richardson, right? Like the Anthony Richardson experience, which the kid is clearly like a kind of like a Ben Roethlisberger, Cam Newton. That's what people hoped they would get out of him. Just a big physical dude who can run, has a cannon of an arm. But as he seeks his rapping career and we see maybe some of the non-committal actions that he's taken the past few years, and by the product that he showed on the field, particularly his precision, his accuracy, or lack thereof in the field, I have a strong feeling that Daniel Jones will get the start right from the start of the NFL season. When coaches around the league, and particularly in the team's locker room, is saying that they're out on a kid, that's usually a pretty good indication of where the organization is going to go. And if the Colts are going with Daniel Jones as their starter, the huge problem with Daniel Jones, despite his athleticism, he has a good arm when he has a clean pocket, and he could have a clean pocket. All right, Pro Football Focus rated the Colts offensive line as a top 5 unit heading into the 2025 season. They've got guys there, Quentin Nelson, who have been there for a long time. They're stalwarts of the program. So there's a chance that he gets good protection. But when that protection breaks down, right, we saw that even in their preseason game against backups. Daniel Jones came in after Anthony Richardson was playing backups. He just gets rattled. And it's an age-old study of certain people, somebody who's coming from a military background. I've seen it. Certain men, as we're talking about men here, have poise under stress, under chaos. Other men do not. It's just not naturally within them. So I'm sure it's something you can work on. But Daniel Jones now, 5, 6 seasons in, I'm pretty certain that he does not have that thing. And in the National Football League, when you have 275-pound guys who are running, 4.8 40s and just monsters out there coming at you, it's not made for everyone, right? Like we've seen it from even an Eli Manning type, right? Which is, I think, what the Giants thought they were getting with Daniel Jones. That even the most unsuspecting quarterbacks could be really good under pressure, right? Joe Burrow is obviously very good under pressure. CJ Stroud, the stats tell us this, that even though he was the most pressured quarterback last season, he was still a very good quarterback. He was rated very highly. So either you have it or you don't. And even in that first preseason game with the Colts, you still saw from Daniel Jones how he gets rattled. He's a little lost out there when the pressure starts coming. And he just doesn't have great pocket presence and like spatial awareness in there. And that's a huge part of playing quarterback, right? Anybody who's played any kind of quarterback in their life, I don't care if you've played flag football, you have to stay poised, you have to keep your eyes downfield, and you have to know how to move around in the pocket. Daniel Jones is going to have a much better offensive line than what he had for the New York Giants, but he faces a Houston Texans defense twice this season. That's among the deepest front sevens in the NFL. Jacksonville's not bad, more, probably average. And then, the Titans are a work in progress, right? But it doesn't matter. At a certain point, you're going to get blitzed as a quarterback. You're going to be under pressure. And you need to be able to shake yourself off and handle that pressure, go on to the next play, and amidst that chaos, still put out a good product and make good decisions. And at this point, as a quarterback evaluator, pretty good at this. I don't think Daniel Jones has got that gene. Like, he doesn't have that intangible. And that's a huge thing in the NFL. So we have to talk about that first. When we talk about the Colts, it looks like it's going to be Daniel Jones. That's not a great thing for this season. Let's move on and let's look at 2024 and what they did very quickly here. They were top 10 in the run game. That's a lot of Jonathan Taylor. It's also a really good offensive line who can hold their own. They're better run blocking than they are pass blocking, but speaks to that whole segment of their offense, right? They're also first in penalties. Very disciplined team, well coached. Shane Steichen, a nod to him. They don't get penalized very often. But overall, as far as production goes, points go, a very average offense. And obviously, it's hard to predict how their offense is going to look in their passing game this season when there's been so much volatility and turnover at quarterback. Okay. So again, I said my piece on Daniel Jones. I'm not feeling great about it. Their tight end that they drafted in the first round, Tyler Warren, is the real deal. He's a beast. Guy's like 6'5", 265, just like a Gronk type of athlete out there. Coaches are saying no matter what, he's going to get the ball. So that this is a great example of Tyler Warren is probably a great fantasy outlook, right? Like, it's a guy you should target in your fantasy leagues, maybe daily fantasy, depending on their matchup week to week. It's not going to mean much for the Colts ATS against the spread as a success or not a success this season. He's a great player, and I think he's going to be a great player for this team no matter who's at quarterback. He's just too big. He's going to be in the middle of the field. He knows how to run routes. So look for Tyler Warren. That's a good thing you can take from the Colts. And Jonathan Taylor, probably still a top 5 back. But I'm not a fantasy guy, so take that for what it's worth. Defense, as far as production and points allowed, they're one of the worst defenses in the NFL last season. Surprisingly sturdy against the run in the sense of yards per carry allowed. They were 4.2 yards allowed, but just terrible against the pass, terrible in macro categories, heavily penalized. Now, the interior of their defensive line is very good, right? They have Glover Stewart, DeForest Buckner. I like that they signed Tre'Davious Ward. Easy for me to say, Tre'Davious Ward. Cornerback and Cam Bynum. Those are two good pickups for their secondary, and they added some depth on their defense in the draft. They also added defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, who obviously was having a hard time with Cincinnati, but he was also a part of that Bengals team that was in the Super Bowl, and he really had that defense playing well. I think Lou Anarumo is a great defensive coach. He wouldn't be in the NFL this long, wouldn't be getting these positions if he wasn't. So there's a chance that via defense and the run game that the Colts are a formidable program this season. Again, not too sure about their passing game, but I think the arrows are pointing up on defense. It's a young, hungry team, but we also need to keep in mind that they were very, very poor and at best average last season in some categories, but mostly very poor defensively as far as production allowed from their opponent. So is that going to just change over because Lou Anarumo is there and because they have a few additions on their defense? I would say no. I would say they're going to be at best an average defense, which, to be fair, in the AFC South might be good enough. Their schedule, too, is very complimentary. One of the easiest schedules in the NFL. They face the AFC South, obviously, because they're in the AFC South, so it's not a good division. The Titans and the Jaguars are works in progress. The Texans are hard, but at least they have a chance against the Jags, and they absolutely have a chance. We'll probably beat the Titans this season. But they also face the NFC South, and the NFC South is not good, right? You got the Panthers, you got the Falcons, work in progress. The Bucs are going to be good. I think so. If you've heard any of my team previews or anything I've talked about or written about here on Substack, I'm high on the Bucs. But Panthers, no. Saints, absolutely not. Falcons could be feisty. But so the Colts have the NFC South, the AFC South, their own division, obviously. And they have some other tougher opponents. They face Pittsburgh, Denver, Kansas City, San Francisco, and the Rams. Of course, they're going to have some tough games in there, but still easier than most. I see a path that they can get 6 to 7 wins but I do think that 7.5 is a very sharp number. The best version of the Colts is probably hitting 8 or 9. I think the worst version of the Colts is going to hit 5 or 6. 7 is a really good number here. I don't have any action around that. I give this team a rating of 68 overall. So they're in that below average range with some signs of potential there. And I really don't have any bets on this team this season. I just would advise, if the Daniel Jones experience comes to fruition, be careful about betting on this team or expecting great things from this team against the spread, because we've seen it before with the New York Giants that I think Daniel Jones just isn't cut out to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, one more caveat is that Shane Steichen was a huge part of the Eagles' success in getting to the Super Bowl a few years ago. Wasn't with the winning team, but he pushed them to success a few years ago. Um, there's a chance that he brings out the best of Daniel Jones, whatever that looks like, which maybe it looks like him greatly limiting what Daniel Jones is doing on a week-to-week basis. But for the most part, I have to expect regression from their passing offense. I think their running offense is fine. I think their defense is average. So again, a 7.5 win total makes a lot of sense for this team, even against an easy schedule. Next up is another AFC South team, the Jacksonville Jaguars.